Okay, so now we want to talk about a concept in cybersecurity called danger management, not risk management, mind you, but danger management. And to explain what that means, we are joined by John Kindervag. John is the chief evangelist with Illumio. Okay, John, well, first, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, so obviously, you played a pivotal role in defining this concept of zero trust, which is now so essential to the way government thinks about cybersecurity. But what's your assessment of kind of the current state of cybersecurity in government? What gains have been made, what work needs to be done?
Well, there've been a lot of gains. I mean, what we've seen a lot of recognition that cybersecurity is important. That's the first thing. Second thing, I think the movement towards zero trust is important too. So the fact that the president issued an EO, the OMB has a directive about zero trust, and we see just this momentum and really the U.S. federal government leading a lot of the leadership, doing real leadership in that area is phenomenal. But it's cumbersome for the government because of processes, rules, regulations, the way things work. It's just not as agile as it is in the private sector, and that's a struggle that I think is just a common struggle of the 21st century when you have a lot of things that were codified, in the previous century, right?
Well, so, I know another thing that's been kind of critical to this whole discussion, especially in the 21st century, is this idea of risk management. I mean, there's all sorts of policies, guidelines, et cetera, talking about this. But, it seems like you're saying you've kind of gone on the record saying risk management is no longer an adequate concept. It doesn't go far enough. Kind of what's the problem that you see here with that concept?
Yeah, risk management comes to the digital world through financial risk management. It comes through the accountants and the banks and all that kind of stuff, where you can quantify things realistically. You have a finite data set and you can quantify things. Risk demands a probabilistic statement be made. There's a 10% chance that I'm going to be in a car accident driving to Walmart this evening, right? Or a 3%, or I mean, statistically, it's highly improbable that I'll be killed driving to Walmart. But actuaries know those things because there's a finite data set and they can determine risk. Risk derives out of gambling, and so you have to know how many sides your dice has. That's a basic concept. In cybersecurity, there's almost an infinite number of variables. And so there's no way to determine a probabilistic statement. There's no way to say, there's 10% chance you're going to get hacked. There's 0%, there's 100%. I mean, there's just no way to know that. And what it causes people to do is to accept risks that they shouldn't. So they say, oh, that's a low probability. Well, one, I've never understood how you could define that probability. It's just not possible. And I've spent 20 years talking to actuaries and risk management experts, mostly on financial services, insurance, that kind of thing, to see if these ideas can truly be ported over to cybersecurity. Eventually determined that they couldn't be, and realized we needed to come up with a different way of thinking, and that's called danger management. Now, that comes out of an event that happened with my nephew when he was 4 years old. When he was 4 years old, he was diagnosed with neuroblastoma cancer. Neuroblastoma, we know statistically how rare it is. It's way less than a 0.5% chance of any child getting it. It is a very rare childhood cancer. And his name was Stephen Danger. Danger is his middle name, right? So his mom, as a joke, gave him the name Danger. And it made me think about, things going through his cancer, uh, diagnosis and all the things that happened in that journey. And I remember when he got diagnosed, the doctors came and said, well, there's a 2% chance of survival. We'll give him 9 months. And my wife said, well, God doesn't believe in probabilities. And that made me think, oh, why am I thinking so much in these probabilistic terms? And to cut to the chase, he didn't die. He's 16 years old now.
Mhm.
He's lived another 12 years when they said that he actually had a 98% chance of dying. You know, they don't tell you that. They give you just a little bit of hope. And he's alive, and underneath my hat, I'm bald because he shaved my head for cancer research last September when I announced this concept at HUSECCon in Houston. So it made me think about, hey, if I have risk, I'm willing to accept it. But if I have danger,
Mm.
that's something that is much more urgent. And so if I can get people to think in terms of danger management instead of risk management, that translates into the digital world more succinctly.
So, all right, that's very cool. But what does this look like in practice? How does this support a zero trust based approach to security, or what are some other use cases? So, kind of make this real for us.
Yeah, so in danger management, the way I'm talking about it now is that we know what's critical to us, what's important to us, and then when we find something that is, say, a vulnerability, do we say, well, it's probably never going to be exploited, or do we go, oh no, that's a dangerous vulnerability for this data set or this asset class, and we decide we're going to protect it? And we can do that using the zero trust model. So step one of zero trust is define your protect surface. What do I need to protect? That's the fundamental question we ask when we're protecting anything, whether it's data, assets, or even the president of the United States, right? The Secret Service knows who the president is. They know what they're supposed to protect. So by understanding that, then we can say anything that really reduces our ability to secure this important data set, this important asset class, is a danger, and therefore I need to mitigate it instead of accept that. And so we say that, you know, risk acceptance, the way we've thought of it for a long time, is not acceptable. So instead of writing a risk acceptance document, we actually fix the problem. And so there's more urgency there. And I use the illustration, you know, I'm about ready to be a grandfather for the first time in less than a month. And so we're going around and childproofing our house. So there's an outlet on the floor. Well, that's a risk. And I haven't childproofed any of them because everybody who comes to my house now is a grown person who knows not to stick their finger in the outlet.
Yeah.
But when you have a toddler, when you have a kid who can crawl, that's a danger. And so you are urgently trying to crawl around on your hands and knees looking at it from that perspective. And then you get those little plastic things and you push them in to the outlets because you don't want the kid to be curious and stick their finger in it. So, you know, there's no electricity coming out there, right? We call that potential. So it's a great illustration. There's a potential for the electricity to attack a person, but the circuit has to be closed. There has to be something that happens. And that is putting your finger in the socket, or that is plugging something into that circuit. And so then we can think about that in a similar way. So that's the best example that I found so far that resonates with most people.
All right, so thinking about danger management, obviously there's a real kind of cultural component to this. The idea of building a culture of urgency. Can you say more about what goes into that?
Well, a lot of that is around incentives, right? I often try to channel the great Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner at Berkshire Hathaway, who used to say, and he passed away, I think last year, the year before, I don't remember, who used to say, show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. So I've written about this a lot, and I think we have a sense of sort of malformed incentives in cybersecurity, and we don't incentivize people to do the right thing. We kind of incentivize them to do the thing that's going to keep them out of trouble. So people are managing their own downside, let's call it risk. I'm not going to do anything about this problem because if I do something and it goes wrong, I'm going to get in trouble. But if I don't do anything, then I didn't do anything and it was just there. And so we're not managing to get people to make things better because, as one friend of mine who's a CISO says, one oopsie negates 1,000 attaboys.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Let's get real here. Let's say I work for an agency. I've heard you talk, and I think, yeah, this is the path we need to take. What are some best practices or tips that you would recommend that we kind of begin to follow?
Well, number one, you need to get leadership buy-in. typically on your zero trust strategy. You're going to be doing zero trust in the government anyway. Make sure that the leaders understand it. They will understand it oftentimes better than the cybersecurity people who kind of have been brought up in a different world. So the zero trust was designed to be strategically resonant to the highest levels of any organization, the grand strategic actors. So I've been able to give presentations and brief generals and admirals and CISOs and CIOs and members of boards of directors, and they all understand it. Secondly, you want to understand what you need to protect and calculate the value of what in the federal government we would call high value assets, your HVAs. And then you need to look at those things and see how well they're protected. And there's a 5-step model of zero trust that helps you do this. You know, you define the protect surface. Step 2 is map the transaction flows. How does the system work as a system? Step 3 is then you architect it. That's when you bring the products in. And too often we start with the products without knowing what we're going to do with them. So I'll get a call. Hey, I bought product X, gadget Y. What do I do with it? Well, what are you trying to protect with it? Well, we haven't thought about that yet. Well, that's kind of a recipe for failure. And then step 4 is policy. This is where everything comes together. Everything is about policy. So I write the policies that only allow the right people to get access to the right data at the right time. And step 5 is monitor and maintain. So we need to monitor, maintain, and re-inject it back into the system. And in that way, the system becomes anti-fragile. So this is vocabulary that I got from the writer Nissim Nicholas Taleb, who wrote a book called Anti-Fragile, but it defines the concept of anti-fragility, where a system gets stronger under stress and load. So he gives the example of a human body. When you overeat on vacation, which I've been known to do a few times, they say what happens, on vacation stays in vacation. No, you bring a few pounds back, right? So what do? You stress your body out by restricting calories, exercising, whatever you want to do. And your body doesn't collapse from the stress, it gets stronger and stronger. And in the same way, we can make a zero trust environment stronger and stronger under the stress and the load by analyzing the ability and understanding then what we need to do to make each of the 5 steps stronger and better.
Excellent. All right. So final question. How can Illumio help with this?
Well, Illumio provides microsegmentation technology, which is, I talk about it as the foundation of zero trust. In the federal government, there's the model of the 5 pillars or the 7 pillars, depending upon which model you're looking at, the DoD or the CISA model, which is fine, except when you build a building, those all kind of, I guess, are based on the Supreme Court building. At least it looks like that to me. But what's holding the building up? The foundation. And so the foundation of zero trust is segmentation. And I said this all the way back in 2010 in the second ever report on zero trust, Build Security into Your Network's DNA, where I said all modern networks must be segmented by default. So Illumio does microsegmentation, and then we do illumination, right? I mean, that I guess is in our name, but we have Illumio Insights, our product that ties together with our segmentation product that looks at all the data and tells you what you need to do so that you can know, I need to fix this, I need to do that. So it actually accelerates danger management because I have visibility into the things that are dangerous to that particular protect surface.
Excellent. All right. Well, we are out of time, but John, thanks so much for being here. This is just a fascinating topic.
Well, thank you for having me, and I appreciate it, and hope to see you in DC sometime.
Thanks a lot.